All right, well, that was the Gazelle Foundation Run for the Water 10 mile. That was part of the Austin Distance Challenge. And by the way, by participating in today's race, that meant I was able to provide clean water for a child in Burundi for the rest of its life. So good for my health and good for theirs too, and obviously in Burundi specifically. So it's time for some post-run risk tips. So let's get started. I wanted to highlight today a common and foundational error that is made more often than not when it comes to risk management in an overall GRC program, and that is that oftentimes we'll find, for example, a non-compliance, and that could have been found through an audit, it could be through a self-assessment, it could be through some tooling that we've deployed, and we detect a non-compliance, either non-compliance with policy or non-compliance with a standard. And invariably, in whatever tool that we're using, we may put that in and track it as an issue. And then we get to the point of saying, do we accept the exception to that risk? And therein is the foundational error that more organizations make than don't. And that is that a non-compliance with a standard or a policy is not the risk. It's actually an element that may contribute to risk. So I'll give you a specific example. You know, if I'm driving my car from New Jersey to Texas, and I realize I have a slow puncture. So that's the issue. I have a slow puncture. The risk is that I might break down along the way and need roadside assistance. But I could look at that and think, well, you know, if I stop every, however long, then I'll just reinflate the tire. So then I find that when the engine gets hot, I have a problem with the fuel injection system and it starts to cough and choke. That's another issue. But it's actually in the same scenario. The scenario is that I'm traveling from New Jersey to Texas, and the risk is that I'll either be delayed and or not make it and incur additional unexpected cost if I have to stop. But I still can make a decision now. Do I accept the risk associated with that, given that in that same scenario, I have now two issues that are contributing to that risk? And then as I'm planning my journey, I realized that there's a major COVID outbreak in a particular city along the route. And so now I decide that to address that issue, I'm going to have to take a different route. And maybe there's a stretch of road that goes 100 miles before I have a rest station. So I cannot accept the risk of an individual issue. I have to look at the whole scenario and see how each of those issues contributes in its own right and collectively to the risk. And yet how many times have perhaps even you heard somebody go straight from a non-compliance with a standard or a control, calling it a risk, and then saying, do we do an exception for that risk? We can't do an exception for risk. We can accept risk or we can mitigate the risk. The only exception is the exception to the policy or to the standard. So a foundational error that we make across the board. So if you find yourself or someone in your organization going straight from a non-compliance with a standard or a policy straight to acceptance or exception of that risk, then you know your model is missing a major critical step, and that is the actual risk assessment of the entire scenario where all of those issues contribute to. So anyway, just wanted to share that in my post-run risk tips today. As always, stay safe, stay unbreakable, stay healthy, and I'll catch you next time.